It was a little past 11 on a quiet Thursday night, the kind of night where the streets are empty and the silence has a weight to it. I was living alone at the time, renting a small ground floor apartment on the edge of town. Nothing special, just a one-bedroom place with cheap carpet, thin walls, and a single window that looked out onto the narrow parking lot, the kind of apartment you only live in because it's cheap and temporary. That night, I was sprawled out on the couch, half asleep, the TV buzzing faintly in the background, some old sitcom laugh track echoing through the speakers. I wasn't even really watching, just letting it fill the silence. Then, I heard something dotty first. I thought it was part of the show. A faint crunching sound, like someone's shoes pressing against gravel. But the laugh track faded, and the sound continued. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Right outside my window. I froze. The blinds were half closed, but there were tiny gaps between the slats, and through them I could see a shape move past. Just a shadow, drifting across the glass. My heart started pounding. I told myself it was nothing, probably a neighbor, maybe someone taking out their trash. But then I remembered my unit was on the far end of the building. Past my door, there was nothing but a stretch of woods and no reason for anyone to be back there. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed in, so heavy that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then came a soft tapping on the glass. Not loud, not insistent, just the kind of absent-minded tap someone might do when they're thinking, like they were testing the glass. I felt a chill ripple through my body. My first instinct was to turn off the TV, but I didn't want to move. Didn't want whoever was out there to know I'd noticed them. I sat there, muscles locked, staring at the blinds, and then, through the tiny gap, I saw it and I pressed right up against the glass, wide, unblinking, just staring in at me. I couldn't breathe. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe a few seconds, maybe longer, but eventually, the eye pulled back. The footsteps started. Again, slow, moving along the wall of my apartment toward the back. I bolted up, heart hammering, and grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the couch. I crept to the back door, the one that led out to the tiny patch of woods. The lock was flimsy, just a cheap deadbolt. I pressed my ear against the door, and I heard breathing, heavy, slow, right on the other side. I backed away, trembling. I wanted to call the police, but my phone was on the kitchen counter, right by the window. The same window that Shadow had just been standing at. I forced myself to move, each step careful, trying not to make a sound. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator answered, her calm voice almost surreal against the terror pulsing through me. I whispered what was happening, begged them to send someone. She told me to stay on the line, to stay calm. But then I heard the sound of the back door handle turning, slowly, testing. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I just pressed myself against the wall, clutching the bat, the phone slippery in my hand from sweat. The handle rattled again, harder this time. And then, silence. I waited, breath shallow, every second dragging on like an eternity. When the police finally arrived, red and blue lights washing over the parking lot, they searched the perimeter. But they didn't find anyone. The only thing they noticed was a set of footprints in the mud by the back door. The strange part? They led out of the woods, right up to my apartment, but there were no tracks leading back, like whoever it was came out of the trees and never left. It was late autumn, the kind of season where the sun sets early and the air has that sharp bite that makes every shadow feel heavier. The time, I was working a closing shift at a small chain grocery store in my hometown. Nothing remarkable, just a place with flickering fluorescent lights, humming coolers, and that faint smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with produce. We closed at 10:00 by the time I'd finished counting the register and taking out the trash. The parking lot was empty, just a single stretch of asphalt under the dull yellow glow of the streetlights. My car sat alone on the far end. It should have felt safe, familiar. But that night, something felt wrong. As I walked toward my car, I noticed another vehicle, a dark sedan, parked several rows back. No lights on, no one getting out, just sitting there. I tried not to think too much of it. Maybe it was someone waiting for a friend, or just resting before heading home. But when I unlocked my car and slid inside, I glanced at my rearview mirror. The sedan's headlights flicked on, and as I pulled out of the lot, it pulled out 2T. First, I laughed nervously to myself. Coincidence. That's all it was. But every turn I took, The car stayed behind me. When I slowed down, it slowed down. When I changed lanes, so did it. The roads were nearly empty at that hour, and the sound of its tires on the pavement seemed to echo louder than my own thoughts. I decided to test it. Instead of heading straight home, I made a few extra turns through side streets, down a quiet residential block, back toward the main road. Each time the sedan followed, my chest tightened. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. By now, I was sure this wasn't random. Whoever was behind me, they were doing it on purpose. I considered calling the police, but a part of me felt ridiculous. What would I even say? That a car was following me? No crime in that. So I told myself to calm down, to just head home and lock the doors. But when I turned onto my street, the car did too, and that's when the real fear hit. My street was a dead end, a narrow road lined with single-story houses and tall trees that blocked out the moonlight. If I drove to the end, I'd have nowhere to go. Panic surged through me. At the last second, I swerved into the driveway of a house 2 streets over. I killed my headlights and ducked low in my seat, heart hammering in my chest. Through the gap in the bushes, I watched as the sedan crept past, slow, deliberate, and then it stopped. Just a few houses down from where I was hiding, I could see the driver's silhouette, but not their face. They just sat there, engine idling, waiting. Minutes dragged by, each one stretching into what felt like forever. My phone buzzed in my hand from sweat as I debated calling 911. Then, slowly, the car rolled forward again. But instead of leaving, it turned into my street, the dead end, the street where my house was. I sat frozen, watching its taillights vanish into the darkness. I stayed there for nearly half an hour before I finally worked up the courage to drive home. By then, the sedan was gone. The street was empty. But when I pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped. On my front porch was a cigarette butt, still warm. I don't smoke, and no one else in my house did either. Tea happened during my second year of college. I was renting a small off-campus house with 2 roommates. The place was old, creaky, with wood floors that groaned under every step and doors that didn't quite shut right. It was cheap, and that was all that mattered. That night, I was the only one home. Both my roommates had gone out of town for the weekend, and I was looking forward to a rare stretch of peace and quiet. Around midnight, I was sitting at my desk, working on a paper. The only sound in the room was the faint whir of my laptop fan and the ticking of the cheap wall clock. Then faintly, I heard something. It came from upstairs, a floorboard creaking. I froze, staring at the ceiling. The house was small, just 2 floors. My room was downstairs. Above me was my roommate's bedroom, which should have been empty. I held still, convincing myself it was the house settling, or maybe the heater clicking on. But then, there was another creak, heavier this time, like someone shifting there. Wait, and then another, slow, deliberate steps. I grabbed my phone and texted both my roommates, asking if either of them had come back early. No response. I sat there, staring at the ceiling, every nerve in my body on edge. Then suddenly, silence. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe it was just the old house groaning. I even laughed under my breath, trying to shake it off. But then, from upstairs, came the faint sound of a door closing. Soft, careful. I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't know what to do. If I called the cops and it turned out to be nothing, I'd look like an idiot. But if it wasn't nothing, I stood, moving quietly, and grabbed the heavy flashlight we kept in the kitchen drawer. My hands were trembling as I made my way to the bottom of the stairs. I listened. Nothing. The second floor was dark. Shadows stretching across the railing. I started to climb, each step groaning under my weight. Halfway up, I stopped, because I realized something. The footsteps I'd heard earlier hadn't been moving randomly. They'd been pacing, back and forth, slowly, like someone was waiting. I should have left right then, walked out the front door and called the police. But some stubborn part of me needed to prove it was nothing, needed to see for myself. I reached the top of the stairs. My roommate's door was closed. I raised the flashlight, my pulse pounding in my ears, and turned the knob. The door swung open with a long, whining creak. The room was empty, bed made, closet shut, window locked. No one there. I let out a shaky laugh, relief washing through me. Maybe I'd just imagined the whole thing. But as I turned to leave, the beam of my flashlight swept across the carpet, and I froze. In the thick layer of dust near the wall was a set of footprints. Bare, human, leading from the door to the closet. I swallowed hard, slowly turning the flashlight toward the closet door. It was closed. I stood there for what felt like forever, my hand shaking so badly the light jittered across the wall. Finally, I reached out and yanked the door open. The closet was empty, just boxes, old clothes, nothing else. But the footprints stopped there. They didn't come back out. It was the summer after high school when I picked up a part-time job delivering supplies to rural gas stations. The work was simple. Load up the van at the warehouse, drive a few hours out, drop off the order, drive back. Most nights, I was done before midnight, but sometimes, if things ran late, I'd be out on the road long after the towns went quiet. That's how it was the night it happened. I was driving a stretch of back road through the woods. 2 hours passed. Midnight. The kind of road with no street lights, no houses, no traffic, just endless trees pressing in on both sides. The only sound was the hum of the van's engine and the faint rattle of boxes in the back. About 30 minutes in, I saw something. Ahead. A car pulled off onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. Normally, I wouldn't stop. Company policy said not to, but as I passed, I caught a glimpse through the windshield. A woman, sitting in the driver's seat, head slumped forward, motionless. I slowed. My stomach twisted. What if she was hurt? What if she needed help? Against my better judgment, I pulled over about 20 yards ahead and killed the engine. The woods around me seemed to swallow the sound instantly. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and stepped out. The air was heavy, damp, filled with the smell of pine and wet earth. I walked toward the car slowly, each step crunching against gravel. When I got close enough, I raised the light. The driver's seat was empty. So was the rest of the car. My chest tightened. I could have sworn I'd seen someone there. A shape, a head leaning forward. I stood there for a long moment, shining the light through the windows, telling myself maybe I'd imagined it. Then, I heard it, from the trees, a branch snapping, followed by the sound of leaves shifting, like footsteps. I swung the flashlight toward the woods, heart pounding. The light caught nothing but a mess of branches and darkness, but the sound was still there. Someone was moving, slowly, circling. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I backed away, toward my van. Then from behind the car, I heard a soft thud, like someone stepping out from cover. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, fumbling with my keys, throwing myself into the van and slamming the door shut. As I jammed the key into the ignition, the headlights came on and lit up the road ahead. Someone was standing there. In the middle of the lane. A man. He was tall, thin, clothes ragged. His face was obscured by the glare, but I could see his head tilted slightly, like he was watching me. I froze, my hand gripping the gear shift. Then, without a word, he stepped backward into the trees, out of sight. The woods swallowed him whole. I sat there, shaking, headlights glaring down the empty road. I wanted to believe he was gone, but as I finally put the van in drive, my lights caught something else. On the side of the road, carved into the dirt embankment, were words, messy, uneven. They read, "Don't stop again."